The federal government is reimposing some visa requirements on Mexican nationals visiting Canada. This in an attempt to restrict the flow of asylum seekers coming into the country. Radio Canada's Louis Blouin just broke this story, and he joins me here in the studio now. So, Louis, good work on this. Tell us exactly what you've learned about what Canada's doing here.
So, according to our sources, the official announcement will come tomorrow, and the measure will take effect tomorrow night at 11:30 p.m. And to give you a broad sense, this new visa requirement will affect about 40% of Mexican travelers trying to get into the country. The process to get that new visa will be quite difficult. I mean, it's about 4 to 6 weeks to get it. People will have to give biometrics, so it will complicate life for travelers coming from Mexico for sure. But this visa will be valid for 10 years. It will allow for multiple entries to Canada for a maximum stay of 6 months each time. So you have to understand also that there's a lot of exempted people for this with this new regime that will be put forward. So foreign students, foreign workers with valid permits won't have to be subjected to that visa. Farm workers, for example. Also, Mexican travelers who had in the past a valid Canadian visa from the Harper era in the last 10 years. Also, travelers with a valid American visa, travel American visa in the last 10 years too. So there's a lot of people who are exempted. So it does not go as far as Stephen Harper's regime that the Trudeau government struck down before. So it's kind of a half measure, if you'd like. But they want to act because there was a lot of Mexican asylum seekers that arrived in Canada in the last year. Yeah. 24,000. It's the largest group of all countries, and they mainly arrive at Montreal Airport, Toronto Airport, and there's been a sharp rise in the last 2 or 3 years. So that's really what they're trying to figure out.
Okay, so there are exemptions here for academic reasons, for legitimate employment reasons. If you're trusted by the Americans because they're worried about people coming into Canada and then going into the U.S., that will also apply. But as you say, about 40% will be affected because with Roxham Road closed, it's now Trudeau Airport is now Pearson. This is why the Premier of Quebec has been saying the federal government needs to give us some money. So this is a big consideration here. How do you think Quebec is going to react to this news?
I think it might smooth things off with Quebec for sure, because remember, Premier Legault sent a letter to Justin Trudeau a few weeks ago asking that these visas are brought back to slow the arrival of these asylum seekers. So I guess it will smooth things off a bit. But still, Quebec is asking for a lot of money because he says also that the welcoming capacity of the province is totally overwhelmed. That's why he asked for those visas to come back. But he's also asking for money because he says that there's a lot of cost, social services, education, healthcare cost. So he's asking for $1 billion for the period between 2021 and 2023. So that's a lot of money. There's no agreement on that between Ottawa and Quebec. But I guess maybe it's a start for them to start a dialogue, which is not really happening at this point.
Right, because they have settled things with Toronto. The Mayor of Toronto, Olivia Chow, got the money she was looking for asylum seekers. So domestic reaction is one thing. Mexico is a very important trading partner, a very important political partner. What's the reaction been from the Mexican government about this?
It's very interesting because clearly the Mexican president was informed of Canada's decision in the last few hours, I guess, or maybe before, because this morning in his press conference, he reacted to that, to the intentions of the Canadian government. And he said it was disrespectful. He said it was unilateral. So he's worried about that. And he's even threatening to not come to the Three Amigos summit that is planned, he says, in Canada, in Quebec, in April. So what will happen with that, we'll see. The government is not confirming that this summit is happening in Quebec in April, but that's what the Mexican president said. So he's putting a threat forward that we can listen.
Respetuoso, no participo. Además, ya me faltan nada más 7 meses. Y no me gusta viajar mucho. Están queriendo tomar medidas en contra de México. Lo lamentamos mucho.
So now, what will this mean? Could there be some retaliation against Canada because of that decision? That's the big question we have. You have to understand also that we are in a pre-electoral context in Mexico too, so that could have some impact. But let me tell you, you know, in the shadows, there are probably a lot of discussions going on right now.
Well, yeah, just on as a final point, at the North American Leaders Summit that Andre Manuel Lopez Obrador hosted in Mexico City. It was all about continental integration and supply chains and working together. So this is a big part of a continental economic agenda that Justin Trudeau would like to continue, and a boycott by AMLO.
Absolutely. And it's funny this morning because he also said, Mexico is not a piñata that you can just hit on, because he sees what is happening in the United States. There's a lot of talks about Mexico and the problems at the border. And then he's looking at what Canada is ready to announce. So that's the reaction. So we'll see where it goes from now. But it's it's pretty tense at the moment.
Okay, Louis, great work as always. That's Radio Canada's Louis Blouin.